The Judgment Infrastructure Podcast, Episode 3, Eli Lilly, Novo Nordisk, and the Economics of Obesity. Welcome back to the Judgment Infrastructure Podcast. In the previous episode, we examined why the scale lie and why body composition matters more than body weight. Today we move from biology to economics. We analyze one of the most powerful shifts in modern healthcare markets, the rise of the GLP-1 medication. Drugs such as semaglutide and tirzepatide have transformed obesity treatment. But the story is larger than medicine. It is also an economic phenomenon. Companies such as Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk now dominate one of the fastest growing pharmaceutical markets in history. For example, Eli Lilly market capitalization has approached 900 billion. A large portion of its revenue now comes from GLP-1 medication such as Mounjaro, and Zepbound. Meanwhile, Novo Nordisk blockbuster drug Ozempic and its obesity counterpart Wegovy has created global demand that far exceeds supply. But this raises a deeper question. Why did this category become one of the most profitable drug classes in history? To answer that question, we apply the same analytical tools used in every episode of this podcast, the 2080 rules and the 5 why. Because behind every market boom lie a small number of structural forces. Part 1. The scale of the obesity market. Before analyzing incentive, we must understand the magnitude of the problem. Obesity has become one of the largest health challenges globally. In many developed economies, more than 40% of adults are classified as obese. An even larger percentage is overweight or metabolically unhealthy. Obesity is not a single disease. It is linked to multiple conditions: type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, fatty liver disease, hypertension, certain cancer. When a condition contributes to multiple downstream diseases, it becomes economically significant. Healthcare systems spend enormous resources managing these complications. From an economic perspective, obesity represents a chronic, recurring demand for treatment, which means that if a pharmaceutical intervention works at scale, the potential market is enormous. This is precisely what happened with GLP-1 medication. But the size of the market alone does not explain the profitability. For that, we applied 2080 rules. Part 2. The 20% driver behind GLP-1 profitability. In complex markets, a small number of structural forces usually drive most financial outcomes. In the case of GLP drug, 4 drivers explain much of the industrial growth. First, chronic disease market. Acute illness occurs once. Chronic diseases persist for decades. This difference matters. Economically, treatments for chronic conditions often require continuous management. Examples include hypertension medication, cholesterol medication, insulin therapy. Obesity and metabolic disease belong to the same category. They are long-duration conditions. This creates a stable and predictable demand for treatment. For pharmaceutical companies, chronic disease markets are extremely attractive because the treatment is not a one-time purchase. It becomes a long-term therapy. Second, long-term medication use. GLP-1 drugs demonstrate strong clinical effectiveness. Patients often experience significant weight loss. However, another important observation has emerged. When patients discontinue the medication, weight frequently returns. This creates a long-term treatment cycle. In economic terms, the medication behaves more like maintenance therapy rather than a temporary intervention. And maintenance therapies generate recurring revenue system. This is a major driver of pharmaceutical profitability. Third, insurance reimbursement system. Healthcare markets do not operate like consumer markets. Most patients do not pay the full price of medication directly. Instead, payment flow through insurance system. When insurance provider reimburse, a medication adoption increased dramatically. GLP drugs are gradually receiving broader coverage from insurers, employers, and national healthcare systems. As coverage expands, patient access expands, and when access expands, the market grows. The reimbursement infrastructure therefore becomes a critical economic driver. Fourth, global obesity growth. Obesity is not limited to one region. It has become a global phenomenon. Rapid urbanization, sedentary lifestyle, and industrial food system has changed metabolic environment worldwide. Countries across North America, Europe, the Middle East, and part of Asia are experiencing rising obesity rate. This means the GLP-1 market is not confined to a single country. It is a global pharmaceutical market. When a drug addresses a widespread condition affecting hundreds of millions of people, the scale becomes extraordinary. Part 3. The 5 why of the GLP economic explosion. Now we ask a deeper question. Why did the GLP category become so economically powerful? We apply the 5 why. Why 1? Why are GLP-1 drugs generating massive revenue? Because they produce meaningful weight loss for many patients. Effectiveness drives demand. Why 2? Why is demand so large? Because obesity affects hundreds of millions of people globally, and previous treatments were often ineffective or difficult to sustain. Why 3? Why was previous treatment limited? Because obesity is not purely a behavioral issue. It involves hormonal regulation of appetite and metabolism. GLP-1 drugs influence this biological pathway. Why 4? Why did pharmaceutical companies invest heavily in this category? Because chronic metabolic disease represents one of the largest healthcare expenditures globally. A successful treatment, therefore, represent a massive commercial opportunity. Why 5? Why does the healthcare system reward treatment rather than prevention? Because healthcare economies are built around treatment infrastructure, hospital, insurance system, pharmaceutical supply chain, and regulatory framework all revolve around managing disease once it appears. Preventive infrastructure is more difficult to monetize. This insight explains much of the modern healthcare economy. The system is optimized to treat problems after they occur, not necessarily to eliminate the root cause. Part 4. Treatment infrastructure versus prevention infrastructure. This leads to one of the most important insights of today's episode. Healthcare markets reward treatment infrastructure, not prevention infrastructure. Treatment have clear economic pathway, pharmaceutical sales, insurance billing, hospital reimbursement, specialist services. Prevention, however, is distributed across multiple domains: nutrition education, urban design, food system, lifestyle behavior, public health policy. Because prevention involves many actors and long time horizon, it is harder to commercialize. As a result, investment tend to flow towards treatment solutions. GLP-1 medication fit perfectly within this existing infrastructure. They are measurable, they are prescribable, they fit within reimbursement system, and therefore they scale rapidly. Part 5. The future of metabolic economy. Looking forward, the metabolic health economy may evolve into a hybrid model. Medication will likely remain an important component, but additional infrastructure may emerge. Continuous glucose monitoring, digital metabolic dashboard, AI-driven nutrition guidance, wearable health analytics. These two may gradually shift healthcare from episodic treatment toward continuous metabolic management. But the transition will take time. Economic system will change slowly, especially when billions of dollars of infrastructure are already in place. Conclusion. The GLP-1 revolution is often described as a medical breakthrough, but it is also an economic transformation. The rise of companies like Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk reflect the power of four structural forces: chronic disease market, long-term medication demand, infrastructure reimbursement system, global obesity prevalence. Together, these forces created one of the most profitable pharmaceutical categories in the modern history. But the deeper lesson is structural. Healthcare systems reward treatment infrastructure, and until prevention infrastructure become economically viable, this pattern will likely continue. Closing. In the next episode, we return to the biology behind metabolic health. We examine a powerful but often overlooked organ, skeletal muscle. Why muscle is the body metabolic engine, and why losing weight without protecting muscle can weaken metabolic resilience. This is the Judgment Infrastructure podcast, where we analyze the system beneath the headline using the 2080 rules and the 5 why. Because when you understand infrastructure, you understand the future.